Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It's Wednesday, June 4th, 2025. Time for us to get this started all over again. I can't believe it. I wasn't ready either. And I don't know. I'm a little bit behind today. Reading some other things that it turned out I wasted my reading time. I was reading about something completely different from the news, which is always a nice change of pace. But then, of course, 9 o'clock is waiting for me. And so's the news. And I'll tell you, I don't know how this happened. But I think I got it all happened one day. I got bored. I was on my own and flipping through television channels, and I saw the news. It was probably like 2 weeks ago, right? That the Eurovision contest was on, and I'd never seen one. And I watched one of the semifinal rounds, and I was. I guess you could say I was blown away. I was astonished. I knew that this was like this, I guess. But I had never seen anything quite like it. And then, but the finals had already happened. I think the night before. That's how I got the news. You can only wake me up to the actual happening of Eurovision by telling me the whole world watched the grand finale yesterday. Oh, okay. All right. So that's a thing. And I saved the finals to watch until later. And when everybody was back home. And the production staff was assembled, although really one half of the post-production staff is like, nope, there's no chance of watching that. Anyway, I watched it. It was an experience, and now I can't get the experience out of my head. So maybe that's how this stuff works. But I was astonished to find out my only real experience, not even my only experience at all with Eurovision was having seen the Will Ferrell movie Eurovision, which I guess is a spoof of the real Eurovision scene. And so I guess when I turned it on and found out, it's really, that's what it looks like, except they don't get into slapstick situations or something. But anyway, I don't know. So I've joined the world there and watched that, even though it was a couple weeks late. And then, I don't know, I got involved in something, and I happened upon an article that was ranking the songs, and I thought, I wonder if they thought the same ones were terrible and the same ones were good as me. And they do and don't. It's a mixed bag, but I don't understand. It's a very interesting thing. There's a whole culture around it, and it's not mine, so that makes it somewhat interesting. And I don't know what to tell you. It's not news per se, and we have plenty of that. That's the good news. And Greg Dworkin is here to deliver it. And I guess the musical segue here is that I have said that people have been sending various fanfare suggestions.
That's fantastic.
Some of them, yeah. So I thought you would like these. I got 3 of them from Scott, and I thought that you might like to be introduced perhaps with one of these piano classics, almost like silent film era piano classics. Okay.
That's a good one.
And here's Greg, ladies and gentlemen. So there's some good ones out there, and thank everybody for sending them in. I've got
Thank you.
Another
there's
one.
Some fantastic ones.
That
you got
I got
another
to
one?
sneak in. Well, I'll save that one, but there's some other good piano ones. There's 3 that come together, and so it was a close call between that one and this one, which we could use perhaps in as a regular sound effect. That's very fanfare-ish.
Yeah,
and then
that's
I thought I'll save the other one for when we mention a certain person who I'm pretty sure will come into the. Actually, there's like 7 or 8 of these people in the planet that could get this one. But all right, we're ready to roll.
That's good. I really in my free time should go through the Animaniacs and see what they have.
Yeah, I mean, people are pulling
Cartoon
bits of sound from
the best.
Yeah. Well, we had that one that got us in trouble the one time we played the whole thing, but you know the one, and that's
yeah.
Well,
That's a classic.
I love them. All right. So news. You heard any lately?
Yeah, there's news out there.
Okay.
It's like the weather, whether you pay attention or not, it's still out there.
Yeah,
The
that's one of the
I
problems.
think what we'll start with is just a sort of a follow-up because we had been covering this over the weeks.
Hmm.
South Korea had an election,
Oh, yeah. Well, they needed
and the
one, didn't they?
opposition candidate Lee Jae-myung uh,
Hmm.
won his election. Now, this is the guy that was running against not a particular individual, which, they had a candidate, but was really running against the individual's party, People Power Party, PPP.
Oh,
They were
well,
the
that
party
works.
of the guy who tried to impose martial law,
That doesn't sound
Yoon
very
Suk
people-y at
Yeol.
all.
He was impeached. He was removed from office. He still faces criminal charges for abusing his power, says the BBC.
Oh,
But he was essentially running against that. Now, he himself is something of a tainted candidate. There have been scandals. There have been family issues. He's not super popular. He lost the last election
oh.
by a small margin. But this one
Well, we
seems
had
like a
that.
pretty solid win because, unlike the United States,
Yeah.
South Korea voted for democracy. And they
Whoa, good
said,
news.
we're going to elect this guy because the other party tried martial law. We don't want any part of that.
Yeah,
And the entire
I'd
party's
be
going
against
down
that.
because of it. Now,
You
that's
would think.
exactly the behavior, electoral behavior that we want in the United States, but we're not seeing.
No, but Korea and Korean things are very trendy, and their pop music is very trendy, and maybe
K-pop.
we'll try their electoral politics afterwards. The winner, I did see something someone mentioned in passing. The guy who won the election is the guy who climbed the walls to scaled the walls to get back into the Parliament building, to having been, I don't know, blocked from entry the normal way, to come in to vote against martial law. So a bit of a Spider-Man figure, really, I
A
guess.
bit.
So I mean that'll make you, that'll boost your numbers in a democracy-loving country, right? Someone who is seen fighting and physically manifesting the drive there. So it's a hint for America.
Right. Right.
Okay.
So, Tom
Lehrer.
Nichols has
Nichols. Okay.
a little piece. Actually, I think this is a JV Last piece,
Hmm.
who said, one of the things that people have to understand is that there's no point in being overly annoyed with Republican robotic, slavish,
Hmm.
uh, you know, a, a loyalty to this cult.
Okay.
The real people to blame are the people who voted for him,
Uh,
which is
yeah.
unusual. It's
Uh,
usually the other way around.
hmm.
You dump on the people who are in power because they're making the decisions. But
Yeah, I see.
people actually vote for him. And as an example, he cites a New York Times story that ran over the weekend about a small town in Missouri,
Okay.
Kennett, Missouri.
Where?
Okay. Kennett,
Kennett.
Kennett, Kennett, Missouri,
Okay.
small town. Dunklin County, Dunklin Donuts. And the entire county only has 28,000 people.
Hmm. Okay.
10,000 of them voted in 2024, and 80% voted for Trump.
Hmm.
Now, Trump campaigned primarily on two things: tariffs. And by the way, steel and auto tariffs, 50% go into effect today.
Oh,
He's
hey.
not likely to roll them back tomorrow because he's still annoyed, mad, furious. Everybody calls him Taco Chicken Trump.
Taco Libre. Nacho, taco. Yeah, right. I did see somebody make a good point. Maybe this wasn't orange makeup the whole time. It was taco seasoning. Yes, all over his
Yeah, but
face.
now that he's angry at the
Yes.
label, he's going to leave the tariffs in place for at least a week. In
Yeah.
any case,
No biggie.
uh, Canada is a small town.
Yeah.
They vote for Trump. And the other thing besides tariffs is deporting 20 million immigrants.
Yeah.
And
Top
today, the
news.
people of Canada are very upset that Trump is deporting an immigrant they happen to know who lives in town and they like.
They had one? That's
Yeah.
amazing.
So J.V. Last says, let me introduce you to the worst people in America.
Well, they're not going to like that, but all right.
Carol, who was born
She's not the
Ming Li
one.
Hui,
She's not
came
the
to
worst.
America from Hong Kong many years ago. She overstayed a visa, got married, got a green card, but she's been part of the community. She tried to get a green card. I don't think she has one. She worked at a diner. She owns a house. She has 3 kids in the public school. People in this small town know her and they love her. And she was arrested and she's in a detention facility awaiting deportation.
All right.
So the entire town mobilized on her behalf. Bring Carol home T-shirts, bring Carol home placards on their lawns. And here are some of Carol's supporters. This is from the New York Times story. I voted for Donald Trump, and so did practically everybody here, said Vanessa Coward, a friend of Ms. Hui from church. But no one voted to deport moms. We were all under the impression we were just getting rid of the gangs.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Carol, you can't deport Carol.
No.
Supporters described her as an ideal addition to a rural town where the population is declining and the only hospital closed. She's exactly the sort of person you want to come to the country, said Chuck Ernest, a farmer. I don't know how this fits into the deportation problem with Trump. Selena Horton, a waitress at the local steakhouse, said she and Miss Hui would give each other huge tips when they ate at one another's restaurant. She loved almost everything that Mr. Trump was doing, but she's the reason for the almost. I can't believe they're doing this.
Yeah, can't believe it.
So they've pleaded with Republican lawmakers to intervene. And J.V. Last says, don't be fooled. This isn't a heartwarming story about support for Carol. This is an indictment.
Okay. Yes.
They did this to Carol. For starters, none of the people the Times spoke with seemed to understand that they personally are culpable. They voted for Trump. He told them he was going to deport Carol, basically.
Yeah. Well,
at Kamala Harris one, Carol wouldn't be in jail. They did this.
That's the bottom line right there. I mean, you could talk about their having read perhaps selectively about the things or having been fooled, but had they pulled the other lever, she would not be in jail. You're right.
And number two, they're idiots. Waitress Selena Horton says she loves almost everything Trump is doing, with the one tiny exception being that he imprisoned her friend and tore her friend's life and family apart. Which of Trump's actions specifically do you like? Is it the elimination of USAID and the attendant death that's bringing to poor people and sick children?
Yes.
Or is it the on-again, off-again tariffs that have the bond market in a panic? Or maybe she was pleased with Trump claiming a picture of dead people in the Congo was proof of white genocide in South Africa?
Yes.
I'd be shocked if this very fine lady, that's capital letters, could name 5 specific actions Trump has taken that she approves of. But the one thing she saw with her own eyes, basically she hates. So how does that work?
I don't know. They just
do. They're idiots. Number 3, no empathy, only special pleading.
Yes.
Do you think Carol is the only good person being deported?
Right.
Do they not understand that other good parts of America have their own Carols?
They might understand that, but
do they understand that the bad parts of America, like New York City, also have people like Carol?
No, that they do not.
Do these moral monsters have any capacity for empathy for people they don't know? Their response is nothing but empty virtual signaling. Bring Carol home T-shirts. How nice.
Yeah.
I hope that soothes their consciences.
And
you know what might actually help Carol?
What?
Vote for Democrats. Yeah. Do you think they'll be willing to do something as unthinkable as voting for another political party in order to bring Carol home? No, I don't either.
No, they might. Their taxes might, stay the same.
And by the way, Greg Sargent interviewed Carol. Very nice interview there.
Yeah. Does she? Well, I'd be curious to know what she has to say about it, but that can be an offline read.
I can't believe how good the town is to me.
Yeah,
they
nice.
Really love me. I get that 90% of the town voted for Trump, but they're doing this for me. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I guess. I also wouldn't be surprised if she had said during the election, "I wish I was a citizen so I could vote for Trump too."
I wish they hadn't voted for Trump. I wish she had said that.
Yeah, I mean. Yeah, I wish that, but she can't. This is an interesting political situation for her. She can't risk alienating all the people who are rallying on her behalf by saying,
Correct.
"Well, this was dumb, everybody," or "Golly, I wish it had gone differently, such that I wasn't in jail." Like that's, I think, a fair thing to say.
I love that you love me, but you assholes voted to put me here.
Yeah, That's what it comes down to. And, the sad thing is that, well, this instance, I don't know how this one's going to work out. I don't. But it's possible. It is very possible that they play the PR game. This makes it to Fox News, and Trump, pardons her or does something to intervene, and they'll all take that away.
If they do that, Steve, but if they do that, Stephen Miller will have a heart attack.
That's
on national TV.
That's okay.
They're not going to
think of the ratings.
They're not going to do it.
Well, it is. Yeah, they may not do it.
Everything they stand for.
I'm just thinking, like, this would be a great stunt, right? Trump does this thing, and then these people are like, I knew my faith in Mr. Trump would be rewarded. I was right. I like everything he does except this one thing, and I asked him to turn it around, and he did. He's Jesus.
Yeah. An anonymous source in the White House had added, she's not Latino or black.
Yeah. Right. So there's a possibility there, right?
No, I don't think so. No? I don't think so. I think Stephen Miller, who's really running the country while Donald Trump watches TV and plays golf, is not going to allow it.
Yeah. There is the small matter of $1 million. Now, I don't know if Kenneth can put together $1 million in crypto purchases, but apparently that'll do the trick.
Yeah.
So maybe, and I mean, even Stephen Miller loses to $1 million.
Maybe, but short of that, I don't think so.
Right. They should build one, and he should build a retirement home there and call it Kenneth Bunkport, and it'll just to make fun of the Bush family.
Right.
Good luck to her. I guess on an individual basis, I hope something works and she makes it onto Fox News and gets can you pardon that? It's not a criminal charge, though they keep pretending it is.
Pardon me, as Steve Martin used to say.
I don't know. I mean, it wouldn't matter whether it was, permissible or not. Do it anyway, and we'll deal with the court later. So who knows? I don't know if she gets herself on TV and you distract. Maybe Elon Musk can come back, have a fight with Stephen Miller, and while they're brawling, he sets her free.
It's just so interesting that in the old days, in the before days, it used to be that conservatives would at least pay lip service to the concept of personal responsibility.
Yes.
None here.
Oh.
And here's another situation where there's no personal responsibility.
All right.
This is from the New York Times. After muscling their bill through the House, some Republicans have regrets. The sprawling legislation carrying President Trump's domestic agenda squeaked through the House with one vote to spare. Not really, because there were two Republicans who fell asleep who could have been called in, and one that voted present who also could have been brought in. So it was the same, exactly along party lines, 4-vote win.
Okay.
But some Republicans now say they didn't realize what they voted for, including Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yeah, that's right.
Including a whole bunch of other people. Gabe Fleischer notes, interesting trend that GOP lawmakers openly admitting they weren't aware of provisions in a major legislative package that they voted for. Seems like a huge indictment of the legislative process, and this has happened to Dems in the past too. Maybe Congress shouldn't be passing its most impactful laws in 1,000+ packages.
Pages. Oh yeah, they complained about that bitterly and said they would never do it when they were
regular order.
Yeah. Now they're
full transparency, said Marjorie Taylor Greene. I did not know about the section on pages 278, 279 of the OBBB, One Big Beautiful Bill, that strips states of the right to make laws or regulate AI for 10 years. I'm adamantly opposed to this. If I knew, the funny thing is,
known. Yeah,
the Democrats proposed 1,000 amendments.
Yeah, I can't read all those either.
But they highlighted parts of the bill
that sucked,
that you didn't have time to read.
Right, like this one.
And there must have been, you know the process in the House, I don't, but there must have been some point where they actually spoke about it, so you'd hear about it even if you can't read.
Oh, yeah, well, she was asleep. There's almost nobody on the floor when they do that. But, yeah, there should have been a staffer combing over in every office.
But if your excuse is I didn't know this was there, the Democrats say, well, we told you about it.
Yeah, right. Oh, they did.
These are the ads.
Absolutely. You're supposed to have
These are the ads. You have the one person. You don't have the House where, nobody's there. You have the one Democrat stand up and saying, the amendment is to strike this particular part of the bill. and you have on the one hand, well, I didn't know it was there, and then you play, well, the Democrats said that this is part of the bill and we want it stricken, and you voted against it, so
Yes.
you were there.
Oh, absolutely. She showed up for the vote, and she'll
Yeah.
be on the record as saying, no, I want this in the bill. Wait a minute.
What are
if
you
I had
voting
known
on?
that it was
You didn't
in
know
there,
what you were voting on
Right.
for this amendment?
Right.
You didn't have time to read the amendment? The amendment isn't 1,000 page long. So, from a political point of view, this is a killer.
Yeah, good. And no one better to, let's say, be on the other side of that killer amendment than her. Good. I mean, it won't work necessarily, but it'll do damage, and it'll play nationally.
It may not work in her district.
Right.
It's going to work in other districts.
And that's fine. And you can even use her in other districts. Everybody, for better or for worse, everybody knows her, and it's for worse.
You will recall, you don't have to use her in Mike Flood's district, because Mike Flood was the guy that said at a town meeting, I didn't know this was in the bill, and they booed him off the stage.
Right.
I mean, this matters.
Good.
Absolutely, positively matters.
And although, just a reminder for everybody, although each of these amendments was a stunt per se, because there was no way that these things were going to pass. The reason there was no way those amendments were going to pass was because there was instructions to the Republicans to vote no on them, no matter what they did, even if they ended up later, 2 weeks later, saying, oh, actually, shoot, I should have. Yeah, I wouldn't have voted for this amendment because I would have been beaten up by my leadership. But yeah, substantively, that was a mistake, and I'm sorry. But so not only you get ads out of it, yes, but you have to stand up and draw those differences and make it clear to everybody, even if you're gonna lose every single one of those things. That's just the way it is. You got to take the opportunity to stand up and make note, and you'll go down in flames, but that's the reason you do it. So, okay, good. It will work well. Nobody is going to do particularly well trying to pretend that I didn't know it was in there, so therefore, excuse me, I didn't do my work. Okay.
So, there's a lot of that. Now, the biggest name in I don't like the bill, you should never have passed it, turns out to be Elon Musk.
Elon Musk. I have
major split with Trump over this. Musk is continuing to hammer the bill. Of course, he's not happy because there were provisions that were good for him that were taken out. But that's not the point.
Oh, okay.
Well, right? The point is that in public, he's saying this bill sucks. And in fact, let me give you two specific quotes from him because he tweeted about it.
All right.
And when he tweets on the platform X that he owns, I think it's fair to say that, it represents his actual thinking.
Mandatory viewing. Okay.
First.
Yes.
1:31 p.m., June 3rd, 2025. So this is yesterday. I'm sorry, but I can't stand it anymore. This massive, outrageous pork-filled congressional spending bill is a disgusting abomination. Shame on those who voted for it. You know you did wrong. You know it.
Oh, wait, shame
and
for voting?
And then 3:32 p.m., 2 hours later, in November next year, we fire all politicians who betrayed the American people.
Elon.
So he's going full Tea Party.
Cool.
But the point is, he has billions of dollars. And part of the way that he got Republicans to fall in line with this bill is threaten to primary them.
Yes.
So what is he saying here? Even if he's not going to spend money to primary them, and we don't know that he won't, it sounds like he's not giving him money.
That's true. I don't know if that'll be as impactful. I mean, certainly not as impactful as spending against them. He should really pull that thread out. By the way, so here's the third piano flourish for people like Elon Musk. Or I don't know whether to use it for Trump or Elon, but we'll say, if you say, then Elon Musk.
And for Trump, it's still the Frau Blucher.
Right, we gotta find. Oh yeah, right. The
lightning
the horror dramatic. Right.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
Okay, so everybody gets something.
That's Trump. The other one is Trump.
All right. Well, I'm glad he's angry and fighting with the Trump forces. I
Right.
was a little
Big
worried
headline
that it
in New
might
York
be
Times. Musk
play
derides
acting.
Trump's bill, saying it will massively increase the already gigantic deficit.
Well, it will.
Elon Musk lashed out on Tuesday against the far-reaching Republican bill and, quotes those tweets that I mentioned.
Yes.
White House allies disappointed at Musk's opposition, says Politico. In other words, they felt like they had to respond.
Yeah.
But with Axios, again, these are the gossip rags, so it was always interesting to see what they're saying. The final straw for Musk appeared to come Saturday night when Trump abruptly announced he was withdrawing the nomination of Jared Isaacman, a Musk ally, to be NASA administrator.
Yes,
SpaceX, Musk sort of has a hand in it. Well,
Right.
Isaacman had donated to a Democrat, so he was out because it's all about loyalty.
Yes.
But the intrigue, says Axios, after Isaacman's nomination was dropped, word quickly spread in the White House that Sergio Gore.
Sergio Gore. Okay. Who's that?
Sergio Gore, the director of the Office of Presidential Personnel, who had clashed with Musk, was behind the decision.
Oh.
Now, I can't tell you how bad this Trump-Musk split is. Maybe it's not that bad. Maybe it is. I don't know. But I could tell you it's real. And you have these two gigantic egos who are all about revenge, mad at each other.
Yeah.
I buy popcorn stock on the dip.
Right. I think they should tie one another to railroad tracks. I don't know. We don't really need to.
Really?
But it's an idea, guys. Or you know what? You could tie one another down in a hyperloop and run over them with a bunch of Teslas, but not you, because they'll be autopiloted, so there's no crime.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So
I'll take anything. Yes.
While they lie about everything, including I didn't know it was in the bill, we're going to deal with some more lies. One of them is that you can't trust the Congressional Budget Office because they always vote for Democrats.
Yes, I saw that one. And it was not the flex she thought it was, in my view. The people who actually read Republican budgets never vote for Republicans. That's not really what you were looking for, I don't think.
Yeah.
But okay.
It's an indictment. Let's go back to JB List.
Hi, everybody. This is Scott Anderson, your summary guy. Were you looking forward to an egalitarian democracy free of bigotry, misogyny, racism, and greed, where people of different appearances, belief, and heritage had a right to live without fear, and everyone could expect a basic level of health, stability, and safety throughout their life? Well, too bad. The plain fact is that we're heading in the wrong direction. And where we once had a voice in such things, increasingly we don't. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. However, if you're looking to join people who understand today's issues and can intelligently address the reality of today from your point of view, you can join us at Kagro in the morning. As you know, there aren't many of us out there, at least compared to them. We need to stick together, and by that I mean send us money. That is contributions to patreon.com. Secure, reoccurring contributions. Those contributions keep this show on the air and us together. We've been through a lot together. The temporary loss of the presidency, we hope. The temporary loss of the House, the Senate, the Supreme Court, we hope. Face it, we are pretty much all that we have left. Remember, we couldn't do it without you, and you shouldn't do it without us. We're in this together, so thanks.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Greg Dworkin still running through the news with us, so you got another segment of news and real happenings coming to you, everyone. Hang on.
Yeah, not a full half hour, but we got some stuff.
I'll talk about the rest of it. The last 5 minutes. Wasn't that first 25 minutes great?
Yeah, well, I'm only on for 20-minute segments at a time.
Right. And
Total.
We
It happened to last an hour because I'm from New York, so I speak very slowly.
Oh yeah, that's the way they do. You and Cuomo can compare your New Yorkness. Everybody was.
And also, I
yesterday.
never interrupt you.
Right. What's your breakfast sandwich order of choice? That was the big to-do yesterday. I don't know if that rose to your level of consciousness. There.
No, I don't pay too much. It's interesting. Andrew Cuomo is running away with the Democratic nomination according to the polls.
Come back.
But
We want it.
a candidate named Adams, not Eric Adams, the mayor who's going to run as an independent, but a different Adams, city council. Nobody knows who she is, Adams.
It's the Adams family.
Is actually rising in
running.
the polls, and Cuomo isn't having the runaway he thought he was going to have. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
By the way,
But
I think
it'll still
Gomez
likely win.
Adams could probably win this.
I would vote for Wednesday.
Absolutely.
Adams.
Oh yeah, that's right. Oh, and it is Wednesday. We didn't do the Wednesday dance. That's the winner.
Well,
Okay.
even if you did, you wouldn't be able to see it because it's
Right.
a podcast.
But we could delight in it verbally.
Right. So Jessica Riedel points out elected Republicans are coalescing around the talking point that CBO's tax cut, that's a Congressional Budget Office, tax cut estimates are complete fiction and that tax cuts pay for themselves. So in other words, when you get caught in a lie, like I didn't know this was in the bill, or the CBO makes up stuff and our made up stuff is much better than their made up stuff. I mean, basically, when you get caught in a lie that the tax cuts do not pay for themselves, you lie your way out of it.
Yes, that was the instruction to the Republican conference when Trump showed up and had a meeting with him.
Just lie about it.
Yeah, right. Tell them if you, we said it, we told you what the instructions were. If you run into somebody who says, I'm worried about it raising the debt, you say it doesn't. If it does later, you say, well, I didn't know about that. And if I did, it was probably the Democrats' fault.
Because you have to understand our brain dead press is simply going to repeat your remark.
Yeah, at a minimum.
And even in paragraph 19
even
down
if
at
they
the
know
bottom,
you're lying.
they say, but it might not be true. They repeated your mark as the headline.
Right. So-and-so claims no debt, no addition to the debt and no cuts to Medicaid, down in the bottom of the paragraph, like paragraph 19. It's going to raise the debt enormously and throw 10 million people off Medicaid.
Right. So-and-so claims I didn't shoot him.
But they
he threw
didn't
himself
claim
in
that.
front of the bullet.
Right.
And jammed it into his body.
Yeah. The CBO thing, of course, there's even more to it than that. Part of the Trump playbook of take anybody who's an expert and undermine them because they're going to use their expertise to undermine you by telling the truth about things. Budget analysts, I guess what was the claim? They were worried. She was angry that Caroline Leavitt had said, well, sure, the CBO says it's going to raise the debt and the deficit, but we found out no CBO analyst has contributed to a Republican campaign since the year 2000, which is an enormously amazing thing to admit you wasted time looking at. And if it just means that all the budget experts, the top budget experts in the country who really know how to read a budget and analyze it, have never been motivated to contribute to any Republican ever, or maybe at least since the year 2000, that means your budgets suck, not that they're partisans. But that's obviously not the way they're going to understand it. So, yeah, just like an exchange that I saw passed around the other day between Josh Hawley and law professor Kate Shaw, I believe. And he was basically asking her, look at the enormous increase in the number of nationwide injunctions under Trump against the Trump administration versus every other president. And don't you think that's anomalous? And isn't it clear that this is an instance of bias? And she just, or you should consider that
he keeps breaking the law.
Yeah, he's just engaged in much more lawless behavior than anybody else. You're going to have to consider that. Sorry. Yeah, similar thing. I go, oh no, well, they don't like any of our budgets. It's not because they're biased. It's because your budgets are terrible.
So here's an interesting tidbit. So Jessica Riedel goes on to say CBO's 2018 and 2019 revenue estimates were 99.5% accurate. That's not the interesting tidbit. The interesting tidbit is that Jessica Riedel is a senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute. She used to be Senator Portman's chief economist.
Okay.
But then
that guy was okay with same-sex marriage, so he's out. We hate that guy, Portman. But yeah, that's interesting. And also Manhattan Institute, that's New York City, super liberal and easy to throw people over the side this way.
Far from it.
Yeah, right.
They lean on the libertarian side. They're not Cato, but there are some decent people at the Manhattan Institute. but very few of them are favorites of mine. Very
All
few.
right. That seems fair.
But there are a couple.
Okay.
Anyway, she's got pretty good conservative credentials. And one of the things I tried to highlight on the pundit roundup today, talking about Musk, is
Musk
conservatives.
music.
I mean, you hear from center-right people, center-left people, liberals, progressives all the time on Daily Kos, because that's who I picked to put there.
Well, all right.
But I wanted to highlight some conservatives and include that Peter Baker from the New York Times, denouncing anti-Semitism. Trump fans its flames. That's a pretty straightforward story. As a younger, the appearance of the figure, the alt-right mascot Pepe the Frog, remember him, was the latest example in Mr. Trump's extensive history of amplifying white supremacist figures and symbols, even as he presents himself as a champion for Jewish students oppressed by what he says is a wave of hatred on American college campuses. Trump is part of the movement to say that if you oppose anything that Netanyahu does in Israel, you are anti-Semitic. It's wrong, it's nasty, it's horrible, it's incorrect. And so, that's part and parcel in some of the fallout that we get from the war in Gaza. But at the same time, talk about personal responsibility. And I'm looking at you, Michigan. You go back and look at the uncommitted movement, or people who say, I couldn't vote for the Democrats because X, Y, and Z. And, I want to know who's paying you. Just
all right.
flat out. I want to know who's paying you, because you're not doing this logically.
At the minimum, you have to stand side by side with the people of Kennett, Missouri, and think about what you've done. Is that right?
Look, I've said this from the beginning. The fact that they would only protest Democrats and never Republicans made them completely suspect on my radar. And I said that months and months and months ago before the election.
That's right. I do. I recall that came up a lot. And even my own thinking about it, which was slightly different, was still like, well, that is, I don't necessarily have to come to the conclusion that you're being paid, but I do come to the conclusion that you, at the minimum, you've come to the conclusion that only Democrats maybe can be moved by protest anyway. So you'll protest them. And that's an interesting explanation, but it should preclude voting for or aiding in any way any Republicans, because they won't even listen to your protest. Why don't you see that as worse? That's very puzzling to me.
Yep.
So I come around to the same place from a slightly different angle, and tents and whatnot, right? I'm in it. I'm in the same one. I'm in a different corner of it. That's all.
Yep.
But if you are getting paid, I would like to have that money. Thank you. I'm not going to do the thing, but if there's any way you could just give me the money with no strings attached, I'll give you my email address and you can do it.
Right.
Okay.
So, war on science. I have this tidbit here. This is sort of interesting. There's a guy from Lebanon.
Okay.
And he has a really interesting story.
All right. Lebanon's an interesting place.
Ardem Patapotane's story. And I think he may actually be Armenian descent. I have to check.
This is already more interesting.
It's not just the American dream. It's a dream of American science. He arrived in Los Angeles in 1986 at the age of 18 after fleeing war-torn Lebanon. He spent a year writing for an Armenian newspaper and delivering dominoes to become eligible for the University of California, where he earned his undergraduate degree and a postdoc in neuroscience.
Wow.
He started a lab at Scripps in San Diego, great institution, with a grant from the NIH, discovered the way humans sense touch.
He discovered this?
In 2021, won the Nobel Prize.
Wow, and dominoes.
And his federal grant was just canceled.
Tip your dominoes,
in late February, he posted on Blue Sky that cuts were damaged by a medical research. Within hours, he had an email from China offering to move his lab to any city, any university with a guarantee of funding for the next 20 years.
All right. Was Los Angeles one of the cities?
No.
Yeah, that's the problem. The Chinese should fund our scientists. Can they do that?
So, this is just a pretty good concrete example of what the hell Trump is doing to ruin science.
Brain
Now,
drain.
here's another, and this is a story I mentioned the other day but didn't get to, I don't think.
Oh, okay.
It's from a blog called Important Context.
Well, there
Could
you
have
have
named
it.
that, instead of Congress Matters, you could have named it Important Context, or you could have named
Yeah.
the blog Sufficient Second. There's a whole lot of stuff you could have named it, but,
Yeah.
we called it that. Anyway, out of his depth, sold his soul, clueless, NIH staffers speak out about Director Bhattacharya.
Oh,
Ride
okay.
sped to
Yeah.
satisfaction over the
That
NIH
guy.
continuous freefall has people speaking out. So this particular reporter, Walter Bragman,
Oh, yeah. I know that name.
uh,
Is it good?
who is an interesting fellow in and of his own right. Don't always believe and follow everything he said, but he went to the trouble of trying to get blind quotes from folks who didn't want to go on the record for fear of retaliation. And in this
That's everybody.
important context, you
Yes.
can understand why people are anonymous.
All right. Wow. What are
Jay
those quotes?
Bhattacharya's stint as director of the NIH is off to a rocky start at his first town hall last month. The former Stanford University health economist who became known during the early days of the COVID pandemic for evangelizing mass infection as the path to herd immunity.
Right.
He was part of the Great Barrington Declaration.
Not that great.
Was greeted by a largely stone-faced audience. Things didn't get much better. A joke in his opening remarks about the difficulty of the job turning his hair gray didn't land. Later, dozens walked out after he expressed support for the speculative lab leak explanation of COVID origins, which is disfavored by experts. During the question and answer session, he was heckled about cuts to research impacting minority communities. It's good to have free speech, he said to the audience. Welcome. But inside NIH, many are feeling unwelcome, and they are ready to be heard. This blog, Important Context, spoke with a dozen people working at the agency in various roles and institutes on both the intramural, that is to say internally funded, and extramural grants side. All painted a grim picture of an institution plagued by chaos, unclear leadership, mismanagement, fear, and demoralization due to capricious rule changes, restrictions, and research cuts, and they blame Jay Bhattacharya for it. Due to clear personnel professional risks, we've got the identities anonymous, but it's a total shit show, one agency staffer told Important Context, explaining that Bhattacharya seemed unaware of how NIH operated when he arrived. It's like RFK Jr. at the HHS. They said he had been promising reforms that were already in place.
Yeah.
He says, we're going to do things that we already do.
Well, he was probably right about that
part. Others who spoke to questioned his intention, suggesting he had a dubious personal agenda. An extramural staffer described the current NIH leadership as people setting up grudges.
A lot of this, I mean, the whole administration appears to be staffed with people who went out on a limb wrongly and were demonstrated to have been wrong and were angry at the people who called them out, are now being appointed as the head of the agency that called them out, so they can come back and destroy
so they're trying to get the agency. That's exactly what's happening here.
Yeah.
Every
agency is like this.
He was there's a quote, basically just trying to create an environment where lies can be treated the same as scientific truth, and he and his cronies can jam through bullshit studies and then try to scream academic freedom. It looks like the NIH is going to collapse on itself at some point, and he's trying to kill most of what we do. It's catastrophic. Trump is killing U.S. science. It's succeeding. So then they go on to say it's very clear he has a vendetta, and he has a vendetta against Francis Collins, who called Bhattacharya a fringe epidemiologist. The American Public Health Association also criticized the Great Barrington Declaration, and 16 other organizations put out an open letter rebuking it. The World Health Organization called the herd immunity strategy unethical. And this is the guy who's running NIH. So, there's so many different figures in the Trump administration that can meet with RFK for worst ever. So you can't cover all of them.
Yeah. And sometimes you can't pronounce
their names. But definitely, I just thought this was one guy who deserves a little bit extra coverage.
Yes, and I've seen his difficult to pronounce name all over the place because this is what he's doing. He's a very active participant in this drive to ruin or erase anybody who says, wait a second, that's not only not true, it's fairly demonstrably untrue.
Right. So therefore, you're making it up, you're lying, you're doing this on purpose, or you're really stupid, or some combination thereof.
Yeah, or at the very least, you just have a grudge against people, and sometimes it turns into, well, where you could otherwise have said, well, I'm wrong, and I'll modify my approach a little bit. Instead, if you just empower the people to, you have the chance. If you just fire everybody and erase the record, you could replace it with made up record that says you were right, and the number of people in the administration, well, the rate at which they do this, 100%, is, that's the most disturbing part. You can't just hand people the reins and say, well, you can take a different approach now. They won't settle for that. I had to have been right then as well, as opposed to taking the agency in a new direction that's open. That's the excuse they give. It's open to my approach. But when you erase the other ones and all the data so that you can't be proven wrong, well, what can I do? Well, we're all going to die, so what can I tell you? Joni Ernst is right. But she meant later. I think it might be sooner.
Right. Do you remember a Florida weatherman by the name of John Morales? I think he was prominent during the Sharpie controversy.
Oh.
And has said on the air several times, global warming is real and so on and so forth.
He doesn't ring a bell, but the stories do. The name escapes me. You got to have a goofy name.
Here's a story with a screenshot, which I thought was interesting.
I will
Morales
take an interest.
Sort of semi-interrupting his weather report. To say Central and South Florida National Weather Service is 19 to 39% understaffed, 17% reduction in weather balloons. It degrades forecast accuracy. And the quote here is, I'm here to tell you I'm not sure I can do this year, this weather forecasting because of the cuts, the gutting, the sledgehammer attack on science in general. And I could talk about that for a long time. And how this is affecting U.S. leadership in science for many years, and here we are losing that leadership, and this is a multi-generational impact on science in this country. And then locally, let's talk about the federal government cuts to the National Weather Service and NOAA. Did you know the Central and South Florida weather offices are currently basically 20 to 40% understaffed? Now, this type of staffing shortage is having effects across the nation because there's been nearly a 20% reduction in weather balloon releases. And what we're starting to see is the quality of those forecasts is being degraded. So there's also a chance because of some of these cuts at NOAA, and he's saying this on the air, the Floridians, NOAA Hurricane Hunter aircraft will not be able to fly this year, and with less reconnaissance missions may be flying blind. And we may not exactly know how strong a hurricane is before it hits.
Is that important?
So I was asked to talk about this today. Right. I'm glad I was. What you need to do is call your representatives and make sure these cuts are stopped. Back to you.
Interesting. So now the inquiry will be, who asked you to do that, and can the Trump administration have them fired? Yeah. That is interesting. It's good that he did that. I mean, I hope that it is absorbed, but my fear is that they'll say, well,
is it real?
You're
Remember
biased.
the piece I told you about the California neuroscientist? Remember the piece I told you about NIH? Yeah, all of it's real.
Yes. It is interesting because I would think that the normal MAGA reaction to being told this is, hey, either this is an excuse for why your forecast is bad, or you won't get it right. Which it's not an excuse, but it is. He is telling you, I may not be able to give you the accurate forecasts you're used to because there's no data coming because they're ruining it. But then they'll say, stick to the weather, buddy. Tell me whether it's going to rain or not. I can't. Because there's no data. I am actually sticking to my job. You say stay in my lane. This is it. Meteorology. It's science. And, I mean, we experienced this early on when they were making all these cuts and MAGA people or otherwise ignorant people were saying, who cares if they cut the National Weather Service? I'll just turn on the Weather Channel and find out what the weather. Well, that data comes from the National Weather Service. And this is the best play in Florida if you're going to penetrate in Florida. I can't warn you about hurricanes. I can't tell you which direction they're going to go. I can't tell you if it's a category 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can't tell you when the evacuation is supposed to start. We don't know. And I do think, it'll probably resonate even in MAGA heads in Florida that those planes can't fly into the hurricanes and find out what's going on. I think they think that's cool and it's military, and they're going to be upset when it doesn't happen. So, well, good call. I don't remember this guy in particular, but I guess he's got a long history of speaking up and reminding people, well, science plays a role in your life, even if you think you hate it. Even if you think you hate it because you weren't good at it in 8th grade. Some people were good at it. Why don't you want to let them be good and tell you what you need to know?
Let them earn a living.
Yeah. That's right. Why do you want to eliminate jobs and raise unemployment?
Hey, it's a living, let me do science.
Yeah. I don't know. There's certainly people who resent science possibly because they weren't good at it. And some people who were okay at it just had weird ideas and can't handle being told, nah, your theory doesn't hold up. But that's science. You have to put up with that or else you're not going to get anywhere. You can't just take over science and fire them all.
Yeah. Well, that's it for me for today, unless you want to hear about David Brooks.
That's a tough call.
Well, he's a jerk. I can tell you about why he's a jerk.
Sure. We can do that. Why don't we do that in celebration of National Cheese Day? I can't connect
National
the two
Cheese
of them,
Day.
but it happens to be the case.
Abby's ears perked up. You said cheese.
So there you go. Thanks to Asparagus Zucchini for telling us about the National Cheese Day. And I felt compelled to do it. He sort of tacoed me into this. I sure hope you won't continue to be silent on the subject of cheese, he said. So,
not a National
not me.
Cheese Day anyway.
No.
So check out this headline.
By the way, if I eat cheese,
which will set
I don't
you
know
up
how silent it's going to be here.
For looking for something really interesting, and
Yes.
you'll be sorely disappointed. You ready?
Yes.
David Brooks writes in the New York Times, I'm normally a mild guy. Here's what pushed me over the edge.
Is it cold cuts?
No.
All right.
He writes, elite snobbery has a tendency to set me off. I started laughing at that.
Oh, my God. Yes, okay.
That was my first reaction. Oh, my God. I was discussing this with the waitress at the Applebee's salad bar.
Yes, right.
Elite snobbery has a tendency to set me off, and here are two guys with advanced degrees telling us that regular soldiers, J.D. Vance and others, never fight partly out of some sense of moral purpose, some commitment to a larger cause. The men who froze at Valley Forge, the men who stormed the beaches at Normandy and Guadalcanal. But that's not what really made me angry. It's that these little statements point to the moral rot at the core of Trumpism, which every day disgraces our country and which we are proud of and love. Trumpism can be seen as a giant attempt to amputate the highest aspirations of the human spirit and reduce us to our most primitive, atavistic tendencies. That's what he wrote.
I hate elitism. You atavistic elitists.
I hate elitism. I hate elitism. Let me use words like atavistic and elite snobbery and so on and so forth. The interesting part about this is it is so shallow. And while I love that he's mad at the Trump administration, it's for all the wrong reasons because he's wrong about everything.
Yeah.
And every veteran writing in says, you're an idiot. People fight because they want to survive, and they're doing it for the people next to them. And there's this thing about Band of Brothers, and it's real, and you don't know what you're talking about.
Okay.
And you who sit on your butt as a keyboard commando doesn't know a goddamn thing about what it's really like to be in a trench. Okay. And so you could attack this article from any one of a number of things. I love the sentiment that he's mad at the Trump administration. This is what set you off after all of this? Not the war on science? Not treating people like Carol in Missouri like a non-person? It's this conceit about what you think the military stands for, who have no idea. This is what sets you off. So, I just thought it was interesting.
Brooks. Well, he was really inviting.
And this is why we don't usually talk about David Brooks. It doesn't really matter what he says. He's an idiot.
Right.
And a shallow idiot at that.
He bothers me too, obviously. But Yeah, I don't read him a great deal. I'm glad he's sort of, becoming aware of what's going on and willing to use
Well, he's
the New
not
York
really. I
Times
mean,
to
his
mention.
entire
Oh, no?
shtick
Right.
is to construct a column that basically says, as a mild person
Yes.
who's avuncular and gets along with everybody and not atavistic at all and never uses big words because I hate elite snobbery,
Right.
I'm going to construct a column that points out point by point everything that's bad about the Trump administration. And my last paragraph is saying, nonetheless, I'm going to vote for him anyway. I mean, that is his entire shtick about conservatism.
Well, it's not elitist. He shares that view with the people of Kennett, Missouri. He's got problems with Trump, but he's going to vote for them
Didn't even
anyway.
mention Carol.
No. Well,
So I don't know how he thinks. Hey, maybe he bought a, We Love Carol t-shirt. I don't know.
Yes. Possibly true. All right. Well, I'm going to tell you, he's a very odd kind of duck. And keep him in New York. Keep him penned up at the New York Times as far as I'm concerned. All right. I don't know what else to say. But maybe nothing. Okay. So we've almost
What about
reached the end
Pete
of our-
Hegseth's war against American values?
Oh,
Taking
okay.
Harvey Milk,
Yes.
U.S. Ship,
Yes.
honoring
he's
the slain
renaming
gay
a
rights
bunch of
icon. He's
ships.
removing the name. He's
Right.
He's
Happy
on
Pride,
a
everybody.
crusade, and I mean literally a crusade. You're not supposed to use that term. Oh, he's doing it.
Oh, he's got tattoos, Crusader tattoos. That's why he's on a crusade.
And that doesn't set you off. You pick
No.
what about the military to get all upset about?
Yeah, I don't
David
know what
Brooks.
that thing. The motivation for people in the trenches. I have heard at elitist gatherings something about trenches. I'm not sure what. The Navy is under orders to remove, and apparently there's a whole plan for renaming ships for American icons that I don't know. I guess they're going to start naming them for Putin or something because they're removing. They made a point of waiting for the beginning of Pride Month to say they were going to remove Harvey Milk's name from one U.S. Navy vessel. And I saw something yesterday. I'll have to grab it off of Blue Sky that they have a whole list of ships that they want to rename, which I guess is just a list of things that will offend people if they remove them. Harriet Tubman, Thurgood Marshall, Medgar Evers, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I mean, they want to offend everybody.
Well, Harvey Milk was assassinated. You're going to name the boat after the person who pulled the trigger?
Yeah, sure. Why not? That's a great idea. They might as well bring that up.
Whose name I refuse to
on our
mention.
music here. Okay, right. Well, it's calculated to irritate, and also, I'm not certain what it's going to do to the people who serve on those ships either, right? And we'll see what they rename them. USS Andrew Tate, I guess, is on the way. And whatever. All right, well, we'll break for today. And you know what? There's probably more news. Do you want to come back tomorrow and do it again? All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. And time for now us to fly solo during the second hour. And, I am reminded I got to download all of my Pocket stuff. Pocket is shutting down. I think I mentioned that in passing one of the other shows. July 8th, I guess, is when it will be shut down entirely. But apparently you can export all saved items, etc. until October. So I'll probably delay to the last minute, but maybe not. I was thinking what might actually be an interesting investment in our time here. I wonder, I've always thought about possibly just like scrolling all the way back in Pocket. I don't know how many things I've saved in Pocket, but if I export them, maybe it'll tell me. And I guess I've probably been saving things in Pocket since like 2000, I don't know what, 15 earlier? I guess the show goes back even further. I don't know how long I've been using Pocket for it. But there's always stuff, if I Pocket it and I use it and I finish the article, I move everything into the archives. Occasionally, I will read something and I don't make it all the way through, and I refuse to move it into the archives, thinking I'm going to come back and finish that article. And maybe 20% of the time, I actually find the time to go back on important articles, or I'm inspired by having read something else. I go back and read the thing, and then finally move it into the archives. But otherwise, mostly just unread things. Sometimes it's I put it in Pocket, but Greg mentioned it, so I a spur of the moment decision whether I archive that thing or not. But stories that never made it on the air, which were just bypassed by other events. And I thought about possibly, what if there was a series of, if I just did a series of pre-recorded shows, like going all the way back and reading stories that, in giving them a second look before Pocket shuts down, I said, this was interesting. It's not timely anymore, or maybe it's just, an evergreen thing, and making recorded shows out of that. And so I haven't decided how I'm going to do this exactly. And I thought it might make for an interesting show during the break I need to take, the vacation from the air starting at the end of next week, though I still want to try and keep things somewhat timely. I don't know. It's just a rough time. The other idea was I could just, at my leisure and on no particular production schedule, read some of these things. That might be a way to experiment with the introduction of paid episodes, like using the micropayment system, I think available through like Patreon, where you can say, hey, it's not the news. I won't cut you off from the news, but, maybe it's 99 cents to hear a 2-hour special of old stories that were pocketed, but that I think still hold some interest. I don't know. Or we just say, to hell with it, I don't want to figure out the payment system. But I think you may be out of luck, because Patreon might make it too easy to just turn on you have to pay for this thing. I just haven't done it yet. Anyway, it's a thought, and, I'd be interested to know how many people might think, I'd throw something in to the coffee can here to hear some of the old stories and bring back memories from whatever, back in the day. Probably horrible memories, though. So never mind all that. Anyway, just something to think about as we find our way through Pocket for the day. Why did I closed Pocket, which I really shouldn't have done. Let's move it back here to its prominent position, and I'll tell you a couple of stories. This one, what order? I don't know. Yesterday, I mentioned to you the two stories written by Atlantic writers. I got to get the other names up here. Ashley Parker and Michael Scherer, both of whom, the two of whom had teamed up on two stories that focused more or less on the fact that Donald Trump is a phone addict, back in the old days, when you would reach out and touch someone. And he said, what a great slogan. I love reaching out and touching people. Let me start using the telephone more. And now he's moved into the cell phone age. He's not so old that he couldn't get used to using a cell phone. But he's just sort of still phone, like voice call based. He's not a young enough person or tech savvy enough person. He knows how to text because he uses Twitter, but he just doesn't prefer that. He loves chatting with people. And so much so that they discovered and wrote prominently about the fact that he'll even answer phone calls on his personal phone from unknown callers, even as president of the United States, which speaks to two different things. One, the incredible security risk, and that's what they're really there for. But two, a personality trait, just in terms of the president of the United States should be working so hard all the time that he really, just for his own sanity, well, I guess that's out. But whatever. Mental well-being is also, I don't know. So maybe that's the story here. But you should be so busy that you're filtering, right? And you're certainly, if you're even have a personal cell phone on you at all, which you should not for both security and time management reasons, see that a call is coming through and it's an unknown caller. Like, I, who have nothing important in life to do, will not answer a phone call from an unknown caller. If it's important and I need to know who they are, there will be a voicemail. No voicemail? That was a telemarketer. I've saved myself some time. But not Donald Trump. He just loves talking on his phone. And granted, this story is about reaching him while he's on the golf course when, okay, your time is yours at this point. I don't know whether it's a wise idea, but that's the decision that's been made. Spend it the way you want. And if that's hitting golf balls, great. If that's answering unknown phone calls and then staying on the line and talking to people, that's on you. Anyway, I wasn't able to read the stories, and I wasn't able to justify the cost of an Atlantic subscription at the moment either. But I have this Mediaite report, which makes a good substitute, I think, just in terms of telling the backstory here. David Gilmour, taking time off from touring with Pink Floyd, has written this piece, or had written this piece. I guess now he's back on tour. This was from April 28th, and that's not the same David Gilmour, certainly. In Mediaite, Atlantic writers spill on butt dials and phone calls from Trump, and then say, as part of their spilling, don't ask how we got his number, because the answer to that is a little bit unsettling too. But I have a feeling they're going to tell us, even if we don't ask. Atlantic reporters Ashley Parker and Michael Scherer spilled on how they recovered a derailed sit-down with President Donald Trump to land not one but two interviews with him in a bizarre saga that saw them get hold of his personal phone number and receive a 1:28 a.m. presidential butt dial. Which, the dangers involved, right? I'm just thinking, this is part of the reason why normally they don't let the presidents have the cell phones, for a couple of reasons, both for filtering purposes and security reasons. And the security, the most ridiculous kind of security. What if you're in a top secret briefing and you butt dial somebody and it's the wrong person, or anybody for that matter? Maybe it's the right person, but your phone conversation isn't encrypted and it's just you talking in the war room with top secret stuff going on, and it's being broadcast to somebody. And maybe you can trust the person on the other end of the line, but also maybe it's being listened to by Chinese hackers, right? That's the problem. According to their newly published piece from back at the end of April, Parker and Scherer, and that's probably the one we landed on through the links yesterday. Parker and Scherer were initially lined up for a White House interview and photo shoot, which was set for either the Oval Office or the Lincoln bedroom. I don't think I've ever seen anything done in the Lincoln bedroom like that, but okay. But on the very week of their scheduled sit-down, Trump abruptly scrapped the meeting and blasted them on Truth Social. He'll do that. On March 18th, Trump took to social media to shred Parker, whom he called a radical left lunatic, and Scherer, who he said virtually always lies, and, every accusation being a confession. Here we are. The writers explained that someone on Trump's team, and they aren't sure who, apparently reminded him of some of their less than flattering past coverage of him. And I would have thought this would happen with everybody, who asks for an interview, that they would look at, see if they said anything bad about me, or somebody else takes it on themselves to do that. As a result, the photo op and interview were promptly scrapped. But Parker and Scherer weren't about to let a canceled meeting stop them, and set about getting a direct line to the president. Don't ask how we got his number, they teased in the article, adding only that the White House staff have imperfect control over Trump's personal communication devices. In the article, the reporters recount reaching Trump on his cell phone one Saturday morning in late March at 10:45 a.m. To their surprise, Trump answered. "Who's calling?" he asked as a television hummed in the background. So it wasn't even at the golf course. Oh, he was at the golf course, probably. He wasn't out on the grass. He wasn't touching grass. He was in the clubhouse watching TV. He was reportedly at his Bedminster Golf Club, and after the pair had introduced themselves, he was happy to talk to them. "You're canceled. I hate you. You're a radical left lunatic. You always lie." Who's calling? Radical left lunatic and always liar. How you doing? What can I talk to you about today? So we called his cell, and he picked up and spoke at length, Scherer explained on X on Monday back in April, shortly after the article dropped. Scherer continued, he called weeks later at 1:28 a.m., when really there shouldn't be any butt dials because, your butt should be in bed and the phone should be charging somewhere, right? And it's not underneath you in the bed, and you shouldn't be up and awake and wandering the White House. But there it is, the embedded tweet from April 28th, Michael Scherer. Donald Trump canceled an interview with Ashley Parker and me and then publicly attacked our integrity, so we called his cell and he picked up and spoke at length. And I guess here a excerpt from the Atlantic piece, which we'll take advantage of because, maybe we actually already read this one. It was before the paywall, but describing how they called him 10:45 on a Saturday morning in late March, reached him at Bedminster and did the whole "who's calling" thing. Parker, appearing on MSNBC's Morning Joe back in end of April, brought a little more light to the surreal sequence and shared how the president's ominous call in the wee hours was accidental. I'm curious what they heard. I should just say it was two conversations and actually one late night 1:28 a.m. butt dial from the president, she told Joe Scarborough. After the butt dial, the pair took another shot at requesting an in-person interview with Trump, as had been originally agreed, only to be denied by the president via an aide. 9 days later, however, Trump reached out to invite Parker and Scherer, who I hate, to the Oval Office on April 24th, also requesting the presence of the Atlantic's editor-in-chief, Jeffrey Goldberg. Of course, Trump had already branded Goldberg a sleazebag for his coverage of Signalgate, which saw Goldberg learn that the administration was planning high-stakes military plans. Well, on Signal, after he was accidentally invited into a private chat room where ranking members of the administration were discussing military strikes on Houthi rebels in Yemen by National Security Advisor Mike Waltz. The three accepted the offer, and the pair recently sat down with Trump for a second interview in the White House. So he's even taco on that, right? I hate them. They're scumbags. Never talk to them. Taco. All right, invite them in. Let's have a sit down in the Oval Office. Two of them, and I'm going to butt dial them. I'd be curious to know, did they record any of that and what happened in the butt dial? It'd be interesting just, I guess you would say, for an intelligence point of view, what's playing in the background? Is the TV on? Is it recording like we had when he called Brad Raffensperger and sort of lets loose?
We found a way in other states later. Excuse me.
Yeah, right. Just farting in the middle of his conversation. Excuse me. It's amazing that he remembers to say that. Anyway, what can I tell you? I'm just curious about the nature of his cell phone use and when it's going to lead to his downfall. I'm just waiting for that to happen. By the way, happens all the time. Just reminder, January 6th attacks ongoing, right? And he's calling members of Congress, and of course they're like, Mr. President, we actually have you on the line. That's great because we're under attack here. You got to call your people off. But remember, he thought he was calling Tommy Tuberville, but it ended up he was calling somebody else. I can't remember offhand now who it was, and they were and left a message. But then when people were calling him to say, you got to help me out, Kevin McCarthy, well, maybe they just they feel more deeply about the election. They care more about the election than you do, Kevin. Maybe. So the phone play once again had a lot to do with events unfolding as they should not have unfolded and making mistaken calls to the wrong people. It's amazing how often the Donald Trump White House gets the wires crossed on this stuff. You just don't ordinarily hear about these things happening to other people because they're organized and they know what they're doing. Here's another one in the same vein. This one also from April of this year. Missed the story entirely, but it was in pocket, I think, unless I stumbled upon it some other way. All right, well, we'll never know. This from CBS News, April 9th of this year. H.R. McMaster. H.R., yeah, I like to call him Puffin Stuff McMaster. That's his nickname, for real. H.R. McMaster receives accidental call from President Trump. It's amazing how frequently he accidentally opens up a live mic on himself and pipes it out to places unknown out in the universe. Just over a month ago, And again, this was published on April 9th, so early March. Just over a month ago, retired Lieutenant General H.R. McMaster received an unexpected call on his personal cell, 4 sources told CBS News. I don't even know when was the last time I knew 4 people who could be a source to CBS News about my getting a butt dial, but I'm not a lieutenant general. But neither is he. He's retired. Okay. Anyway, it was from the White House, and he was instructed by the voice on the other end to stand by for the president. Oh, so this reveals that this is something different. Not a butt dial, just a mistaken call. But I mean, a call that had the White House switchboard placing the call and saying, please stand by for the president. So not an accidental call like butt dial, but they called the wrong person. How does this happen? What's going on? McMaster, who had served as national security advisor during President Trump's first term and was ousted after 13 months, was surprised to hear from Mr. Trump at all. But you could see why. All right, if you're Michael Scherer and you get a call at 128 from the president, and then it's clearly a butt dial, you're like, well, all right. I guess that explains it. But surely they might have thought the president might be calling us. At 1:28 a.m. is unexpected, but that's, that could be. And here, H.R. McMaster, he thought he hated me, but maybe there's a national security disaster of some kind that he knows I know something about and can help with. Just a day earlier, on March 2nd, this is why it becomes even less likely, though, right? So a day before this call, Trump had lobbed his latest insult at McMaster, although it was the same with Scherer and the other. I've forgotten the other reporter's name already. But the Atlantic reporter, he just attacked them, just savaged them, and then calls them. So it does happen. So a day earlier, Trump had lobbed his latest insult at McMaster, blasting him on social media as a weak and totally ineffective loser. It's just amazing the language he uses. McMaster had also just appeared on CBS's 60 Minutes, which we know Trump hates, right? Suing them, where he voiced skepticism about Mr. Trump's overtures to Russian President Vladimir Putin and Putin's willingness to end the war in Ukraine, which he does not have, right? So here's what happens. The call comes in. He's like, what the F is this? Answers it. Hello? And it says, stand by for the president. Sorry, the president of the United States is calling. I don't know what it actually says. But so then he's like, all right. Then the call begins. Henry is how Trump opened the call before launching into the conversation, according to 2 sources who were not authorized to discuss private conversations, but did so nonetheless. It was then that McMaster knew this familiar voice was indeed Mr. Trump, but he also realized something else. The commander-in-chief had not intended to call him at all. McMaster goes, in fact, by HR. That's not just his name, but that's what he wants people to call him. Hey, HR. It's really amazing. And usually when people say, well, that does it, I'm going to call HR. Human resources? No, HR McMaster. So what's happening here? McMaster goes by HR, short for, by the way, in case you wanted to call him by one of his names, Herbert Raymond, not Henry, right? So Henry, no Henry, no one here by that name, sir. Wrong number. Click. Mr. President, this is H.R. McMaster, he said into the phone. Like, it's interesting because had he just said, right, that, and not sure exactly how to answer this, or it's clearly Trump and he is the president, allegedly, so you got to be careful about how you correct him. So while searching for words, the guy, Trump, what if he just starts launching into all sorts of national security stuff? It's not like it would be out of place for H.R. McMaster, but he sets him straight right at the top. Mr. President, this is H.R. McMaster. Now, this is amazing, just in terms of like addled Trump brains, right? So what's the normal response to that? Oh, I'm sorry, I meant to call so-and-so. Or but he doesn't quite get that the guy has just said, this is H.R. McMaster. I'm the one you're talking to. Because he says, the answer, you like this one, Mr. President, this is H.R. McMaster. That basically, we have to censoring horn. Would I talk to H.R. McMaster? That's what Trump answers. Not, oh, I didn't mean to call you. How did that happen? He says it to him as though it's a third party. Why the F asterisk here in the retelling in CBS News? Why the f would I talk to H.R. McMaster? Trump asked dismissively, and then Trump launched into a scathing critique of his former aide. Two sources said the call was brief. So it doesn't even click in his stupid fish brain that he's talking. That's what he's just said to you is this is H.R. McMaster. So he doesn't do it like first person. I hate your guts. You're an a-hole. You're the worst. You're a
bald asshole.
Right. Something like that. He could have gone that direction, but instead he's not really registering that I've just said this. And not that he would hesitate to insult him to his face or on the phone necessarily. It's just, did you not understand what happened? You're not even addressing your insults to him. Two sources told CBS News that the president intended, ready for this one, intended to call South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster, not his former national security advisor. I want you to get H.R. McMaster on the phone. H.R. McMaster? Really? Are you sure? Yeah, Henry. So he definitely thought he was calling Henry McMaster, but I'm curious how he got him. I wonder if in his mind, I hate that guy H.R. McMaster, but, he's gone on to win the governorship of South Carolina. Or is he just like, get McMaster on the phone and doesn't tell the switchboard which McMaster, and they don't ask because they don't care about things. It's unclear who bears responsibility for dialing the wrong McMaster. According to one person familiar with the call was placed by an aide who works with the president. And the answer is, that is who is responsible for dialing the wrong McMaster, but they don't know who that person is, or they won't name them. A White House official declined to discuss the president's private calls or whether a phone conversation even took place. In a statement, White House Communications Director Stephen Chung criticized the former national security advisor, because why not? H.R. McMaster has completely beclowned himself, and his third-rate book, which is now sold in the bargain bin of the fiction section of a discount bookstore, is filled with lies in a futile attempt to rehabilitate his tattered reputation. Chung just going all out on this one. H.R. McMaster, a CBS News contributor, by the way, declined to comment. Interestingly, H.R. McMaster, the actual one, has been outspoken about Trump's views on Putin, how he believes the Russian leader played to Trump's ego and insecurities with flattery, as he wrote in his recent memoir, At War with Ourselves. The mistaken phone call on March 3rd came several days before Atlantic editor-in-chief Jeffrey Goldberg was mistakenly added to a group chat with top Trump national security advisors that included a discussion of sensitive information about the U.S. military strikes in Yemen. The current national security advisor, Mike Waltz, did he get fired eventually? Now I can't even remember whether he's in or out, told Fox News that he takes full responsibility for the group chat episode. Okay, and then that, of course, we remember. But then a few days after that, it turns out, maybe we didn't learn until a few days later, that he's also butt dialing Atlantic writers as well. And God only knows what's wrong with these guys. Anyway, what's the story on Waltz and where he is now? I can't even remember. Anyways, okay, former national security advisor. So yes, according to Wikipedia, reminded. So May 1st he's out. So he's already gone a month already, and has been. Oh right, he's succeeded by Marco Rubio as national security advisor. Okay, that's, and he hasn't gotten around to naming anybody else, really. Okay, well, he doesn't care or pay attention to national security, and that's something we should all keep in mind. It's now been a month since the national security advisor was let go, or whatever they decided to, however they structured his dismissal, and we don't have one yet, and Marco Rubio is there instead. Ridiculous. Okay, let's see. A couple of other things that I should probably update you on. Another break coming up. Here's one I guess we can do relatively quickly without reading the whole article. Just give you the headline level outrage, or not outrage, depending on where you stand on this. Family of Colorado anti-Semitic attack suspect taken into ICE custody and has visas revoked, source says. CNN reporting this one, and we only have a moment to discuss it here. But, oh, by the way, the latest, they've gone back and forth on what were the devices that this guy used to perpetrate his attack. He was at first listed as having thrown Molotov cocktails into the crowd of people. Then there was the astonishing announcement that he actually had some sort of homemade flamethrower, which somehow made the attack seem more horrific. But then they went back and another report was like, no, it was Molotov cocktails after all. And then a fourth version of the reporting, which is, well, he had both Molotov cocktails and a modified flamethrower, which it wasn't a modified flamethrower, it was a homemade flamethrower, which, as it turns out, was like a, water sprayer or, like a backpack pump version of, that might use in applying pesticide or something like that. They had filled with gasoline. So not smart or safe, but it's a terrorist attack. So I don't know what you really thought you were going to get out of it. Anyway, point is that he did perpetrate this attack, and as we may have mentioned on the show the other day, because under the Trump administration and the various people in it, they have been reassigning so many FBI agents from counterterrorism to immigration enforcement. There was, of course, no way they were going to detect and counter this before it happened, so they needed, for it to be successful, to convert it into an immigration case. Hi everybody, it's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and patreon.com, patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. This is it. We're down to the last segment of the day. I guess I can tell you the rest of the story here as by way of background, but that's I think what's going on here is having removed all of these agents from counterterrorism. I don't know whether you could have 1 million agents in counterterrorism and not be guaranteed by any stretch of the imagination to prevent any particular attack or any attacks at all, but you seem like you'd be better prepared when there is such an attack if you had been working diligently on counterterrorism, and maybe you can close the case faster. But since everybody's been switched over to immigration, they needed to look like they were on top of it by saying this is going to be an immigration case now, and here they're treating it exactly like that by rounding up the family of the attacker and I guess revoking their visas and I guess getting set to deport them. Now, that's sort of a very Trumpy and conservative approach to a lot of terrorist attacks, and borrowing a page from Israel, which isn't necessarily anybody we should be borrowing pages from at this point, that they very frequently will hold the families of terrorism suspects accountable for that terrorism, which is not, in keeping with the American way, but Trump doesn't really care about that, or he thinks that the American way should be different. Anyhow, So here's what they're doing. But it also has the added benefit of saying, see, this isn't a terrorism case that we missed. It's an immigration case that we got. So here they are doing exactly that and rounding them up for deportation, I guess. The 6 family members are being held in Florence, Colorado. As of late Tuesday, a law enforcement source said immigration officials plan to transfer the detained family members to an immigration detention facility in Texas as they await final expulsion proceedings. It remains unclear to which country the family might be deported, the source said. They could be deported as early as tonight, the White House's post said. So I don't know whether there's been an update since then about that, but anyway, and mixed feelings among various places in the political spectrum on this one. I've seen ostensibly left-leaning people say, well, pick your battles, right? Because these people are connected to a horrific terrorism attack. But they're not. They're connected to a person who perpetrated one. On the other hand, I'm sure the conservatives are saying, well, do you really think that he did this attack in total isolation and kept his family in the dark? Well, very often they do. I don't know. But yeah, it's an unsympathetic, I guess some people imagine this to be an unsympathetic group of detainees because of their connection, and emotions are still raw about this attack. But, you know, on the other hand, I do also see plenty of left-leaning folks pushing back and saying, no, you push back on everything. There's no reason in the world for you to transfer the blame for this attack onto anyone else. And there's still the matter of due process. Even if they were involved in the attack, they should get due process. That's what we do in this country. And, you know, that's one of the big problems of fighting over due process rights in the context of a still fresh terrorist attack. You can demagogue it. And it'll happen. It's happening now, as a matter of fact. The fact that they're rounded up in an immigration dragnet is reason enough to be concerned. So I wanted to update you to the fact that is happening, and we should be keeping an eye on it. There are other equally stupid stories out here I need to share with you. Let's see, where do we begin with our chain of stupid stories? How about with this one? I saw this one in the Hill yesterday, and I'm looking for more reporting on it, just to see if we can't stay updated. This is something you probably, I guess the headline you'd categorize in, yeah, but they can't do that files. But of course, we're talking about the Trump administration. So who says, or we'll come up with a novel, supposedly quasi-legal argument as to why we can do this. What's going on? I'll give you the headline. Trump DOJ reviewing Biden pardons. I know that you know that MAGA has been angry for a long time about Biden pardoning Hunter Biden pardoning anybody, of course. And so what's the hook here? They're going to latch onto the whole, the latest hotness in MAGA conspiracy theory circles is fed by, thank you, Jake Tapper for doing this. He was so old, Biden was, that he didn't know what he was doing, and something, auto pen. Everyone already loves the auto pen accusation, which, you know, like everything, every accusation from Republicans being confession. The heart of the auto pen accusation isn't that they used a particular piece of machinery, because Trump almost assuredly uses this piece of machinery as well, for things that need to be signed by law but that aren't cool. Although he thinks everything is cool and loves sitting at the desk and being dictated to. What is this? You see him in these sessions. What's this one? And I don't know the name of that aide who explains everything, but he's like the one articulate guy in the White House, which is amazing. And this is his job. So he's well matched to the job, explaining what each executive order is. But Trump sits there with a glazed over expression on his face and, oh yeah, that's a good one. And then he signs it. The accusation here is Biden was so out of it that he didn't know what he was signing, or maybe even he was being taken advantage of and his staff was having him sign things he didn't know about or understand, like exactly what everybody thinks is happening here with Trump. Anyway, well, what about this, right? Trump pardoned January 6th rioters. He pardoned people that bribed him. He pardoned people that could implicate him in criminality. Shouldn't we be doing something about these pardons? Well, we're told, the pardon power, it's absolute. You can't review these things. It's beyond our reach. And so we sit there and gnaw at our fingernails or tear our hair out and say, yeah, the Constitution does say that. But you probably imagined in the back of your mind at the time, if Trump didn't like something a Democratic president did, he'd probably try to undo it and dare people to stop him. But he hasn't done that yet. Well, here we are. Trump DOJ reviewing Biden pardons, writes Brett Samuels for The Hill. The Department of Justice, if it still is one, is reviewing pardons doled out under former President Biden. Why? How? Citing concerns about whether Biden himself was making decisions about clemency power, a senior administration official confirmed to The Hill. So you just latch onto the conspiracy theory, and it's going to be impossible to investigate or prove, which means it can go on forever, which is exactly what they're looking for. So who would be so annoying? Who would be so blatantly absurd in their approach to the legal profession in general, to laws, to the Constitution, and all of that jazz? Well, we probably need the music for this one. It's not the same person, but it's someone evil, a dastardly figure. You know who it is. Ed Martin. Why? Because Ed Martin is now the pardon attorney, which should keep someone like you, and particularly in this administration, super busy, because there's a million people that you could be pardoning for political advantage. But instead, he's going to focus on people that were pardoned by the previous president. Why? Because there's hay to be made here, and it helps contribute to the Biden didn't know what he was doing, and he was so out of it and so old that anything that he did is questionable, and we can open 1,000 investigations and reverse all of his policies, which is their ultimate fantasy. The official told The Hill that pardon attorney Ed Martin will lead an independent review, because he's an independent guy, of course, to determine if unelected staffers took advantage of Biden when it came to pardons and commutations. If you think about it, why would he pardon his own son if not for the interference of unelected bureaucrats, right? The American people, he says, a White House spokesman, Harrison Fields, is talking here. The American people deserve to know the extent to which unelected staffers and an auto pen acted as a proxy president due to the incompetence and infirmity of the previous president, or the current president. White House spokesman Harrison Fields said in a statement, President Trump was elected to restore the integrity and transparency of the office, and answering the question of who was actually running this country for 4 years is well within the president's rights. Martin was originally Trump's choice to serve as top prosecutor in the District of Columbia. His nomination was dropped in the face of Republican opposition in the Senate over his ties to the January 6th attack in the Capitol. The pardon review comes as fresh reporting and new books, including, just got to plug out everywhere you can, right? Original Sin, President Biden's Decline, Its Cover-Up, and It's His Disastrous Choice to Run Again. That's the title of Jake Tapper's book. Have reignited debate about Biden's mental acuity while in office, not really, and whether he experienced cognitive decline. It also comes as Jesse Jackson Jr., Michael Cohen, and others who were denied pardons under Biden have called on Trump to re-examine the cases of those who did not have their applications approved during the previous administration. I'd be interested to see exactly what they're doing there. Keep an eye on it, as Bob Menendez does the same. A Biden spokesperson told The Hill that the former president and his team thoughtfully reviewed requests for pardons and commutations and pointed to Biden issuing more than 2,500 individual acts of clemency. Biden allies have more broadly pushed back on claims that the former president was not carrying out his duties while in office. Biden issued more than 80 pardons during his 4 years in office, and he commuted the sentences of thousands of people. The vast majority of his acts of clemency were, you might say, very traditional. They were granted to nonviolent offenders, including numerous individuals who had been charged with nonviolent drug offenses. But some of his more controversial uses of the pardon power came toward the end of his term, which also is a bit of a tradition. Biden granted a full pardon to his son, Hunter, who had been found guilty on federal gun charges and pleaded guilty to federal tax charges, both of which ordinarily would thrill Republicans. You let somebody walk on gun and tax charges, you're an honorary Republican. But not if it's Hunter Biden. Hunter had been a political target for Republicans throughout his father's time in office. The 46th president also granted blanket pardons in the final moments of his term to 5 family members and several former government officials who had been the target of political attacks from Trump and his allies. Reuters, which first reported the investigation, reviewed an email from Martin saying he was directed to launch the probe, though he did not specify by whom, but you could probably guess. The outlet reported that Martin would focus on the family pardons as well as death row clemencies. That's just dirty pool, but okay. On his last day as interim U.S. Attorney for D.C., Martin said that he would give particular scrutiny to pardons given to Biden family members. They need scrutiny because we want pardons to matter and to be accepted and to be something that's used correctly. What a joke. Holy mackerel. So I do think we're going to take a hard look at how they went and what they did, Martin said at a press conference last month. Martin is not only the pardon attorney, but he was also tapped to lead the Weaponization Working Group, a new task force established by Attorney General Pam Bondi. Trump's actions have further exacerbated questions about presidential clemency power and how it can disproportionately benefit those with connections to the administration. Trump, during his first term, used clemency powers on political allies such as Paul Manafort, Steve Bannon, Roger Stone, and Michael Flynn. Trump also pardoned nearly all January 6 defendants on his first day in office earlier this year. So shouldn't be a can of worms that they're willing to open up, but they're just going to do it totally hypocritically. No claim in those comments from Martin that they believe pardons to be reversible. And I don't know whether they're going to end up going there or not. This might just be an opening salvo and say, well, we're not looking to reverse pardons because we don't want to set that precedent. But you never really think that they plan ahead on these things. And I wouldn't be surprised if they eventually attempt it anyway and try to frame it in a way. And it will be delivered like Alito would 100% vote for the proposition that President Trump should be able to reverse President Biden's pardons because of his mental acuity. But since I'm awesome, that won't apply to me later when another president, Democratic or Republican, says, well, if this case stands for the principle that pardons are indeed reviewable and reversible, then I want to review and reverse some of his pardons. Well, it's not that. It stands for the principle that presidents widely believed to have suffered a loss of mental acuity can have their pardons reviewed. But there's a test that we're going to make up, and Biden fails it and Trump passes it. So that's the test. The more orange they are at the point at which they issue the pardons, the more sound they are. That could end up being the test. So we'll see whether they try to actually reverse any of them. But right now they're just saying, well, we want to try to generate live controversy about these bygone pardons so that you focus on those instead of the stupid ones that we're selling, quite literally, to anyone with $1 million, as we read about just the other day. All right, let's see. Other stories that we might want to try to shoehorn in here. There's another wacko that you can't believe is for real and actually exists in America today and who is associated with the Trump administration. Part of an email or a Blue Sky post thread that I started yesterday, just when I saw this story in I can't remember exactly how I put it, but I think it was just this commenting on the endless parade of people of this sort involved in the Trump administration and how you just can't believe how many of these people do the things they do and just have the audacity to try and, stand in front of everybody and say, everything's normal here. Look away. What was it? It was, here we are. The Trump era is just an endless parade of Republican wackos that you'd think just can't possibly be real because they're just too crazy. But they are real, and every day brings new stories about new crazies who just don't recognize any limits. Part of it was sparked by our reading about the wackadoodles down in Texas in the AG's office, the former Solicitor General of Texas, just freely commenting inside of his office about weirdo sexual assault, rape fantasies about other people in that office, telling the people in that office, this is what I think about when I think of you. What? And not, reaching the same heights here, but just then I just saw so many other stories like that, some of which we've mentioned on the show, like the guy in the Forest Service who just was like, build an airstrip here. I don't care. I'm going to build a cabin on a federal forest land and just claim it's mine. What? You can't do that. The Elon Musk, just doing the whole campaign on ketamine and then be like, put me in charge of the government. The $1 million contribution for a pardon from mom that we read about the other day as a millionaire tax cheat gets let off the hook by $1 million crypto purchases, over and over, all of these things that you just can't believe are real. Here's another one. So this, let's see, I first spotted where? It's the same guy. So who did I put? So there's reporting from the Daily Dot and MSNBC. Let me start with the MSNBC one, I guess. Or, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know which one is the right one to start. But the guy we're talking about is Paul Ingracia. Is that the name of the guy? Let me open up the two pieces here. I don't know which one I spotted first. But the Daily Dot one. Let's try that one first. Exclusive. It's an exclusive. So let's read about it. And it's from early March 13th, 2025. The other piece was from MSNBC, and it is current. So I probably saw that and then said, who the hell is this guy? Or maybe it was in reverse. I saw the old one and said, what's new with this guy? So Paul Ingracia here, and I feel like we might have mentioned his name before. The exclusive back in early March was Trump White House lawyer, Paul Ingracia, wasn't actually a lawyer when the firm he now works for said that he represented Andrew Tate. So I'm not sure what's the scandal. There's 5 in the headline here. Trump White House lawyer who wasn't a lawyer was hired when he wasn't yet a lawyer, or to represent international kidnapper, sex trafficker, and criminal Andrew Tate. So one, you took the case, but somebody's got to take the defense. There's always that. But usually, like you say, well, lawyers, everybody's entitled to a legal defense and to hire a lawyer. Okay, fine, but the guy you hired isn't a lawyer. Oh. Well, I mean, you're entitled to a defense, I guess, right? But, okay. So what's the story? Ingracia was listed as an associate attorney on his firm's press release and his own Substack at the time. A lawyer working as White House liaison to the Department of Homeland Security represented himself as an attorney more than a year before he was admitted to the bar. So it's not like I took the bar exam. I think I did pretty good. I'm just going to tell everybody I'm a lawyer, which is wrong, but it's somewhat understandable. But a year before, I eventually anticipate being a lawyer. Numerous outlets reported that Paul Ingracia represented Andrew and Tristan Tate in a civil suit in Florida in July of 2023, based on a press release from the law firm he worked for, which called him an associate attorney. So it's not even the criminal context where everybody deserves a defense. I mean, everybody deserves, I guess, to be able to be represented in a civil case too. But I guess unwise for the Tates to say, yeah, get me an attorney who's not an attorney. All right. Maybe they want to sue that guy and say, maybe you owe us our money back. But the announcement ran a week before he even sat for the bar exam and a full year before he was admitted to practice law in the state of New York, when McBride Law Firm in New York City filed a defamation suit on behalf of the Tate brothers against an alleged victim in July 2023. Dirty pool all over again. The firm released a statement featuring blurbs about its team representing the notorious duo, and they assigned it to a guy who hadn't yet sat for the bar exam, which also, why is he even there? Ingracia was listed as an associate attorney with McBride and was assigned to work on the Tate brothers' civil case several months ago. Is the quote. Weeks before filing the suit, McBride and Ingracia flew to Romania to facilitate Tucker Carlson's interview with the Tate brothers. Covered in glory is this Ingracia guy. Headed to Romania with McBride Law Associate Attorney Paul Ingracia on an epic business trip. Joseph McBride, who I guess is the named partner here, posted on X on June 28th, 2023. While McBride was touting the credentials on public channels, Ingracia also said he was an attorney. As early as May 16th, 2023, months before he took the bar exam, Ingracia referred to himself as an associate attorney at the McBride Law Firm, PLLC. Does that mean he was working there for the summer? On his personal Substack, but his bio on the site frequently changed. In a July 2023 piece on Tate, he described himself as simply as an associate at the firm. In August, he referred to himself as a law clerk, which is a totally different sort of thing. Might have been his summer work. And by the way, people don't say, oh, I'm an associate attorney. They say, I'm an associate at this law firm. That's the lingo for it. So just like Cuomo with his breakfast order saying, it's just a matter of, it's the phrasing that sets you apart, right? Oh, there's something wrong with that reference. As he says, what's his favorite breakfast sandwich? Bacon, cheese, and egg. No, I don't know. People were pointing at it as saying, well, that means he's not a New Yorker. Maybe, but maybe a better assessment of it is he doesn't speak English. It's bacon, egg, and cheese. That's the order. I'm sorry, there's no other way to list those. Technically, they're all words and you can scramble the order, but it's the kind of thing that gets you looked at as an alien visitor. Like, I like egg, cheese, and bacon sandwiches. You're under arrest, sir. Anyway, New York state records show that Ingracia, a 2022 graduate of Cornell Law, took the bar on July 25th and 26th, 2023, under his given name, which, by the way, is different. Slightly different. We know him as Paul Ingracia. His name is Paolo Ingracia. You could be forgiven that one. While Ingracia received his results in October 2023, he was not admitted to the New York State Bar until July 30th, 2024. According to New York State law, it is illegal for anyone to hold himself or herself out to the public as being entitled to practice law or to advertise the title of a lawyer in a way that makes the public believe they are licensed to practice. So that would be a violation of that. We could get deeper into that one if you wish. It is a misdemeanor or Class E felony to go ahead and do that. What can I tell you? This is one of the dumb behaviors in which he was involved. But there's another dumb one that I wanted to tell you about that is more recent. Trump taps extreme January 6th apologist. That's how you know Paul Ingracia. For a key watchdog role. That won't end well. This is from Barbara McQuaid, MSNBC columnist. The subheader, the selection of Paul Ingracia to lead what? The U.S. Office of Special Counsel rivals the equally irresponsible and doomed nomination of Ed Martin. There's your connection. And as Barbara explains here, picking Paul Ingracia to lead the U.S. Office of Special Counsel is not like putting the fox in charge of the hen house. It's more like setting fire to the whole farm. On Thursday of last week, President Trump nominated the former far-right podcast host. How come this podcast should be leading to bigger things, don't you think? Podcast host to lead the important, albeit little-known, federal agency office. OSC is, she reminds us, not to be confused with the special counsel position, for instance, like recently occupied by Jack Smith, appointed under federal regulations by Attorney General Merrick Garland to investigate Trump for alleged violations of criminal law. Instead, OSC, the actual Office of Special Counsel, is an independent agency, but who cares about independence, created by Congress as part of the Civil Service Reform Act in the wake of the Watergate scandal. The office protects whistleblowers and other federal workers from unlawful employment practices. So he's going to have to find something new to do with the office, I guess. OSC also enforces the Hatch Act, or used to, the law that bars political activity in the federal workplace. The nature of the work demands an experienced investigator who is scrupulously apolitical. Ingracia is anything but. The 30-year-old Ingracia has been a lawyer for only 3 years, although claiming for 5, I guess. He previously was a fellow at Claremont Institute, the same far-right think tank that brought us John Eastman, a key alleged architect of the 2020 election's fake elector scheme. According to its website, Claremont is currently working to undermine the left's hold over America's institutions and conscience. Just in case you were wondering what they were up to lately, Ingracia doesn't have the legal experience for the role, but he has something more important, at least for this administration. Earlier in Trump's second term, Ingracia served as the president's liaison to the Justice Department, where he referred to himself as Trump's eyes and ears. Not that he uses either of them. According to NBC News. And by the way, my hope is that Paul Ingracia is Donald Trump's right ear, specifically, if you had to choose one or the other. He was reassigned to the Department of Homeland Security after he reportedly clashed with DOJ officials by pushing to hire candidates with exceptional loyalty to Trump, reports ABC News. Now, mind you, he is pushed out of the DOJ because of his particular approach to hiring candidates with exceptional loyalty to Trump. Now, mind you that it is the current DOJ leadership's role in life to hire people with exceptional loyalty to Trump. He was recommending people too crazy for Pam Bondi, Ed Martin, and various other lunatics who are now ensconced at the DOJ. So I don't even know who he was. Maybe they're in the story. Let's see. We'll read a little bit more before we exit for the day. His views on the January 6th riot are extreme, even by MAGA standards. How so? In December, Ingracia called not only for pardons for the January 6th defendants, but also for $1 million per family in reparations. He advocated for Trump to, quote, expressly name in a public proclamation any judge or prosecutor involved in the J6 scam and call on them to resign from their offices and pressure Congress to undertake impeachment proceedings against them if they don't cooperate. Ingracia also urged Congress to make January 6th a national holiday to place the day's event in their proper historical context. How do you like that? Holy mackerel. Ingracia has referred, by the way, to Vice President Mike Pence, as a traitor who belongs in the ninth circle of hell. You can see why I confused Pence and Vance in that one.
Listening to Kagro in the morning with David Waldman.
All right. Well, we're already late in handing things over to Justice Button for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, but guess what he's got coming up? MAGA Mike, torn to shreds by his own party. Let's see what's going on in congressional happenings as he updates you on his collection of stories from around the country and around the world coming up next. We'll see you tomorrow.